Hey everybody, Brian back with another video today in the shop, and we're going to show you how to maintain your LA 145 John Deere lawn tractor. In most cases, if you know how to fix one like this or any other 2 or 4 cycle engine, you can fix pretty much everything else in your shop and shed. If you want to see how I did it, stick around for another episode of Shop Projects. So the first step to this project is we're going to pull the seat back. On most tractors, the service schedule is right on the bottom of the seat, and you want to see, based on the hours of use, what's required. In this case, in the 50-hour service, you're pretty much changing everything except for lubricating the fittings, which you're doing every 200 hours. So in this case, I'm going to buy a kit that has all the parts. I'm going to show you how we do it. So for my particular LA 145 tractor, I need an LG 263 kit, and I'll put a link in the description to where I purchased this, as well as another website that'll help you locate what you need for yours. In this particular case, this kit comes with Turf Guard. It comes with 2 bottles of Turf Guard, which will cover you for your engine. It'll come with your engine oil filter, your inline fuel filter, your 2 spark plugs, your pre-air filter, and your main air filter. And I'll show you how easy it is to change these next. So the first thing we want to do on this 50-hour maintenance is start with the oil so that we can let it drain out and work on other items while we're doing this. And then what you want to do is you want to take an oil pan, stick it underneath the engine so that you can collect everything that's coming out. And you also want to cycle the engine beforehand. I usually cycle it about 2 minutes beforehand so that it's not too hot, but it softens up that really viscous oil that's been sitting for about a week, and this will help it drain out much faster. So here on the opposing end of the oil filter, on some engines it'll be in different places, but once you find it, you're basically going to pull this cap off. In this case, it's just one of these keyed caps. If it's stuck, you can take a wrench and pull it off. In my case, it's not, because I maintain this tractor quite frequently. And then once you pull it off, it's going to start pulling oil out. And just keep in mind that this oil is probably at least warm, if not hot, now that I've cycled the engine. So you want to use eye protection and obviously gloves, because this is the messier part of it. And now it'll just start pouring oil out, and we can start working on everything else. I'll just keep the cap over here. And what you can do is just stick a paper towel in here, balled up, so that it doesn't drain all over this electrical cable, and just let it drain out. So next step we're going to do is we're going to remove the oil filter, and just keep in mind that this oil again is warm, and you want to keep a paper towel or rag on hand in case any of this drips. It shouldn't come out too much because we've already pulled out most of the oil in that pan, but just keep in mind that it could. And we're going to use this adjustable channel lock. It's going to damage the filter, but we're going to throw it away so it doesn't matter, and the new one's going to go on just hand tight. Lefty loosey. Once you get it off, it should come off with your hand. Once you break the seal, you can see once you break that edge, and if you're putting these on here, I'll show you a trick that you're supposed to do with most oil filters. Pull this off now. You can see it'll make a little mess. This is why I do it in the garage, because then I can clean it up after, rather than outside where you don't have as much control. Now let's stick that guy there. Let him drain out. With the new oil filter, what you want to do is you want to take some fresh oil, apply it right to the seal. In this case, I got my Turf Guard right here. You want to apply it right there. Good liberal coat. This will help when you go to take the next one off, as you saw how easy this one was to come off. Again, right to tight. Spin that back on there. Again, you don't want to tighten this with a wrench. You want to hand tighten this. There's no pressure really against this. It's never going to come loose. And that's all you need to do. And the rest, now I'm going to take a rag and just clean off the oil that's spilled out. And we'll be ready to move on to the next task. And just to get a better cleaning, I'm just going to use something like denatured alcohol and get all this oil off the chassis. I don't want any of this spilling outside or dripping at a later date. It's on the engine block in an awkward place. You really can't avoid spilling oil out from these, even if you fully drain it. It's just the way it is. You got your oil filter back on, and now by now all the drained oil should be out. So while we give the oil a chance to fully drain out, I'm going to do a couple other tasks. In this case, we're going to do the inline fuel filter, and what I've done is I put a vice grips on the outbound side of the fuel filter. On the inbound side, I'm just going to use one of my Craig clamps. What you want to do is you want to clamp down these fuel lines so they don't spill fuel everywhere, especially on the tank side. And before you pull these hose clamps off, just make sure you've got a paper towel at least handy so that you can easily clean a spill up if you make one. Again, this is the advantage of working in a garage. These have these little hose clamps here. So these are a little bit of a pain to pull off, especially if somebody hasn't done this before. I'm going to pull this hose clamp back, which is going to give me a little clearance to slip that off. Let's slip that back. So now I should be able to pull this off, and this is the part that's kind of a pain. These don't tend to come off very easily. So just keep twisting the fuel filter and pull it out, and eventually it should come free. So you can see that guy came out. It was a little bit easier this time than last time. And wow, these hoses really grip onto the plastic with hose clamps over a long period of time. Again, you can see gasoline just poured out because it's in the filter, so you want to keep something underneath. It looks relatively clean, but these are really cheap and they come with the kit anyway, so you want to replace everything in one shot. And that will keep your fuel nice and clean, and obviously your engine. And you want to note the direction. There's a little cap portion of this, and you want to make sure that's facing the fuel pump. And stick these back in the hose, and we can slip the hose clamps back in place. Okay, so with the fuel lines back in place, I'm going to slip these clamps back and seat them right on top of the plastic flange of this fuel filter. Get them right towards the end. You got to make sure that you're clamping down with these, otherwise you'll get leaks. They should fit quite snug. Just using pliers, and they're just a pinch clamp type. Be good. Pull the clamps off. So now we can put this hose clamps back in place to secure this, and you want to make sure when we start up the engine for the first time that we're observing to make sure that there's no leaks. It's the most important part of this, that you're not leaking oil and especially fuel. Next up, we're going to change the air filter and the pre-filter for the air filter. And to do that, we pull this plastic cover off. They just have 4 thumb screws. Pick this cover off, set it aside. This is the main filter here, and you can see it is pretty dirty. And then I want to remove this pre-filter. What I want to do here is make sure that everything goes back in the right way. So this has a screen on that side that should be facing the engine. We'll set this old one to the side. And the main filter is keyed, so you can't screw it up. This will go in here. And just make sure it's seated well, that you're not pinching when you're closing it up. And that's it. Put the cover back on. Piece of cake. Tighten our screws. Again, hand tighten everything. Now you can see my intake on my fan, because this is a fan cooled engine, is a little dirty. So I want to come in here now with the shop vac, take the opportunity to clean this whole thing off, clean the battery out because it's all dirty, and use this opportunity to give a nice thorough cleaning, because this is probably the only opportunity you're ever going to do it. Next up, we're going to put the oil cap back on, secure that in place before we put new fresh oil in the engine. Again, put that in place, it's keyed, lock it, and that's all you need. Clean up any excess oil that's spilled on anything. This side's pretty good though. We're just going to give it a nice clean off. This accumulates a lot of dirt, and the cleaner you keep the engine, the longer it's going to last you. So one of the last things we're going to do is refill the oil. In this case, we're going to use a dipstick to check for the level and not just a measured quantity that we're pouring in. They give you 2 bottles, which more than covers what you need. In my experience, you use about 1 and then 2/3 of the second one, so they give you more than enough. And to get started, you want to make sure that you use a clean funnel that you're only using for engine oil and not anything else. Stick that in the fill, clean that guy off, set him off to the side, fill her up. Basically, I'm going to fill it up almost to the top, check the level, and then just keep adding until we get to the level that we're supposed to be. As always, you want to make sure you're using the right oil for your engine. In this case, it's 10W30. You can check the back of your service schedule, or in this case, it just comes prepackaged with the kit. So now we're on to the second bottle, and we want to be careful how much we put in here to not overtop this off and make a mess. Probably put half this bottle and check the level. Alright, I'm going to stop there and see where we're at. It's a lot easier to keep adding than to overfill and have to drain it out. And while I'm checking it now, you also, after you turn on your engine for the first time, turn it off, and you want to do the same thing, which I'll show you. So now I am still below the second notch. And I want to come up to the second notch where it says full. So we're going to keep adding a little bit more. Alright, that should be good. We're right up to the full line. Just below it. We'll be fine. And then we'll double check it when we turn the engine on for the first time. So the last step in this 50-hour maintenance schedule is to remove and replace our spark plugs. And before we do this, we want to make sure that our key is out of the ignition. We have no chance of starting this as we're working with electrical components. To do this, we're going to pull these rubber boots off to the cable. We're going to take our spark plug socket, which has a rubber gasket in the end, and which will help you facilitate pulling the spark plug out. It shouldn't take a whole lot to pull these out. You shouldn't over tighten these when you install them. And that gasket will hold on to it so it doesn't fall out, especially if you're working in an engine bay in a car. And I'm going to pull this out, and you can see it's pretty dirty. I'll zoom in just so you can see the difference between a new one and an old one. Focus. Oh, there we go. Alright, so here's the old one, and you can see it's blackened from many uses. And you can see the new one here is nice and clean. In my case, these come pre-gapped, but if you don't have a gap gauge, you should get one anyways because they're handy, because these don't always come pre-gapped. And if you don't have one, I do recommend that you get a gap gauge because it'll set your distance that's required as according to your maintenance manual for this to operate correctly. In my case, these are pre-gapped, so we can go ahead and just swap these and put these right back in. So again, we're going to take our socket wrench, switch the side, stick it right in the end, and you want to line it up. Just be very, very careful anytime you're working on an engine block, especially, to not cross thread. Don't do this with an impact wrench. See, guys do this all the time. They'll do everything with impacts, and it's one of those things you should do with hand tools so that you can feel the tooth engage in the thread, and that you're never going to cross thread if you do it that way. Don't over tighten it. I'll give it one little crank and that's it. There's nothing's going to force this thing to come out. Put the boot back on, and we'll repeat the process for the other side. So a good tip is to take the old engine oil and pour it right back into the containers the new one came in. And this way you can properly store it and obviously properly dispose of it on a toxic waste day in your dump and get rid of it correctly. Hey, come on. Okay, so now we're ready to turn this guy on. Put the parking brake back in. Manual transmission release out. Put it back in. Now we can turn the key. Choke. The last thing we'd want to do now that we run it for a few minutes is to double check the oil level. Now that the oil's had a chance to circulate and heat up. Oil level looks still pretty good. And that's all we need to do. You know, one of the advantages of fixing stuff yourself is that a lot of these machines are built pretty much exactly the same. You know, components are placed in different places, but the process is pretty much identical. So if you know how to fix one machine, it's really easy to fix another. And the best part is you can get back and go on whatever you're doing, and you're not dependent on a repair facility or a technician to come out and fix it for you, which will save you time and money in the long run. A kit like this is very inexpensive, only requires about maybe a half hour of your time, and you're getting going again. You should do this regular maintenance with machines like this, because the better you take care of the tool, the better it'll work for you. So there you have it. Pretty much a piece of cake, very minimal tools, and it costs about $45 to $50 depending on the tractor that you have. This covers most of the 50-hour list items, but there's a couple other miscellaneous stuff from the deck down, like sharpening the blades, checking the belt, and some of the other fittings. I'll probably cover that in another video, so if that's something you guys would like to see, please comment in the section below. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, comment, consider subscribing if you're not a subscriber already. And if you had any particular questions, message me on social media or YouTube platform, as well as leaving comments below. I will usually reply the same day. And thanks again for watching. See you guys in the next one.